Have you ever crossed a line you knew you could never uncross? In today's story, you'll discover how one small, reckless decision can ignite a passion so fierce it changes everything. Before we dive into Claire's unforgettable journey, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community for more heart-stirring, emotional stories every week. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. I was just supposed to be the housekeeper, the invisible one, the one who made the beds, folded the laundry, packed the lunchboxes, and disappeared quietly into the background of someone else's perfect life. At least that's what I told myself. Until that night, in the warm, sleepy streets of Charleston, South Carolina, life moved slow, like the sweet drift of Spanish moss swaying from the old oak trees. I thought I'd found a safe, simple life when I accepted the live-in job with the Harrisons. A beautiful house, 2 wonderful kids, a kind woman, Emily, who treated me like family, and her husband, Nathan. Nathan Harrison was the kind of man stories are written about, the kind you notice without even trying. There was a steadiness about him, a quiet authority that filled a room without a single word. His smile was rare but genuine, and when it landed on you, it felt like the sun breaking through heavy clouds. I told myself 1,000 times that what I felt was harmless, a silly, secret crush, just admiration from afar. But late at night, when the house was dark and the world was silent, I could feel it creeping closer, a longing that curled around my heart like smoke, thick, heady, and impossible to ignore. And then came the night Emily packed her bags for a week-long business trip, leaving Nathan and me alone under the same roof. I remember watching her car disappear down the long driveway, the taillights blinking like tiny red eyes in the darkness. And I remember the way the silence of the house wrapped around me, pulling me deeper into something I wasn't sure I could escape. It wasn't just temptation, it was gravity, and I was already falling. The Harrison home sat on the edge of Charleston's historic district, a grand old house with white columns, creaky wooden floors, and wraparound porches that caught every warm summer breeze. It looked like something out of a postcard, majestic yet lived in, with flower boxes under the windows and ivy crawling up the brick. I had my own small room upstairs, across the hall from the master bedroom. It wasn't much. A simple bed, a dresser, a view of the sprawling oak trees, but it felt like a little piece of stability in a life that had often been anything but. Emily Harrison was the kind of woman people loved immediately. She had a laugh that filled a room and a kindness that made you feel like you mattered. She trusted me with her children, her home, her life, and part of me loved her for it, which only made what was about to happen even harder to justify. Nathan Harrison was different. Where Emily was warm and open, Nathan was controlled, composed. He carried himself with the easy confidence of a man who built things with his own hands, steady, strong, unshakable. He rarely spoke more than he needed to, but when he did, people listened. There was something about the way he moved, the way his eyes lingered just a second too long sometimes, that made the air feel thicker around him. It was a pull, magnetic and silent, that I tried to pretend I didn't feel. He loved his family, that much was obvious. Every morning before he left for work, he kissed Emily's forehead and ruffled the kids' hair. Every weekend, he fixed broken toys, painted tree houses, and grilled dinner on the back patio. He was the kind of man most women dreamed of. And yet, there were cracks. Small, almost invisible, but real. Sometimes, I'd catch Nathan staring out the window a little too long. Sometimes, his laughter with Emily sounded hollow, strained, like an old song played too many times. And sometimes, only sometimes, when he looked at me, there was something raw in his eyes, something dangerous, something that made my heart skip and my breath catch before I forced myself to look away. It was foolish to think it meant anything. Foolish to think that a man like Nathan Harrison could ever see a girl like me as more than the help. But even fools have hearts, and mine had already begun to betray me. The night Emily left, a strange stillness fell over the house. The children's laughter had faded into sleep, their small bodies curled up safely in their beds. Downstairs, the grandfather clock ticked in the foyer, loud and lonely in the silence. I wandered from room to room, feeling like a ghost haunting someone else's home. The kitchen still smelled of the pasta Emily had made for dinner. The living room lights were dim, casting long shadows across the wooden floors. Everything felt hollow. I poured myself a glass of wine. Just one, I told myself, and sat by the window in the dark, listening to the soft hum of cicadas outside. The summer air was heavy, thick with moisture, and the satin robe I wore clung to my skin. It had been a gift to myself, a silly indulgence tucked away at the bottom of my drawer, something I never dared to wear when the house was full. But tonight, the emptiness made me bold. I sipped slowly, trying to fight the growing restlessness inside me. But every creak of the old house, every gust of warm wind rattling the windows, seemed to whisper his name. Nathan, Nathan, Nathan. Across the hall, his door was closed, but not locked. I knew it wasn't, and I knew he was behind it, maybe tossing and turning like I was, maybe thinking thoughts he shouldn't think either. The wine warmed my blood, but it wasn't the alcohol that made my hands tremble. It was the aching need, the forbidden longing that had been building for weeks, maybe months. I couldn't pretend anymore. I didn't want to. I stood up slowly, feeling the cool floor under my bare feet, my heart hammering against my ribs. The hem of the robe brushed the tops of my thighs, scandalously short. My nipples hardened against the satin, and I wrapped my arms around myself as if that could tame the wild thing growing inside me. The hallway stretched long and dark before me, each step a silent betrayal. When I reached his door, I hesitated. My fist hovered in the air, trembling. For a second, I thought about turning back, slipping under my covers, pretending this moment had never existed. But then I remembered the way his eyes sometimes lingered on mine, the way my skin burned under his briefest touch. And so, with a soft, barely there knock, I let the night, and my heart, decide for me. The door creaked ajar, allowing our gazes to intertwine in the soft, muted glow. Nathan lingered in the shadows, his shirt creased from slumber, the contours of his physique robust and defined in the muted light. His breath hitched as his gaze fell upon me. There I stood, robe hugging my curves, hair disheveled from sleepless nights. "Claire," he whispered, a soft invocation carried away by the breeze. I advanced, the silk gliding over my thighs, my bare feet whispering against the wooden floor. For a fleeting moment he paused, caught in the tension between obligation and longing. And then, with a deliberate grace, he extended his hand. His fingers brushed against my jawline, quivering ever so slightly, before gliding down the curve of my neck. Every inch of my skin buzzed with sensation in the aftermath of his caress. He cradled the back of my head, pulling me nearer until our foreheads met, and I felt the heat of his breath brushing against my lips. When he kissed me, it unfolded with a deliberate grace. It was profound, a lingering pain that drew a gentle gasp from within me. His hands traced my waist, shaping me to him as though he sought to imprint the contours of my body into his memory. The satin robe cascaded from my shoulders, pooling at my feet like a whispered confession laid bare. Nathan's hands glided along my spine, his fingertips brushing against the gentle arch of my back, igniting a cascade of shivers across my skin. He traced a tender line with his lips along my jaw, my neck, my collarbone, slow and purposeful, until I found myself arching into him, yearning for more. He lifted me with a gentle grace, cradling me as he traversed the room, his tenderness stirring a deep ache within my heart. As we arrived at the bed, he gently laid me down, treating me as if I were something precious, something delicate that he questioned whether he was worthy to embrace. The mattress sagged beneath his weight as he settled beside me, the warmth of his body melding with my own. Our legs intertwined beneath the sheets, our hands exploring with a gentle reverence, discovering one another in languid, tender caresses. His mouth adored every inch of my skin, gentle at first, then increasingly fervent as my fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him nearer, deeper. He approached me with intention, his touch igniting a trail of heat across my thighs, my hips, my ribs. Each kiss whispered promises he dared not voice. Each breath I offered him was an act of yielding. As our bodies discovered their rhythm, it felt akin to donning a garment of destiny, a truth etched deep within our very essence. We progressed with a measured pace, intentionally, relishing each precious moment, each cherished breath. It wasn't chaos, it was reverence. It was an intimacy that seared the soul, transcending mere physicality. The kind that lingered, leaving marks long after the flames had faded away. In that instant, as Nathan pressed his face into my neck and murmured my name with the weight of a secret, I realized we had traversed a boundary that could never be undone. The following morning, sunlight poured through the windows, gentle and radiant. As I stirred from slumber, I found myself nestled in Nathan's embrace, my cheek gently pressed against his chest. The rhythmic cadence of his breath anchored me, a reminder of the delicate nature of the world around us. For a fleeting instant, I permitted myself to entertain the notion that it might indeed be this straightforward, yet, the truth lay in wait just outside the threshold of the bedroom. We navigated the house with caution that day, weaving around one another with furtive glances and whispered caresses. Each time our gazes intertwined, an unspoken energy surged between us, a haunting reminder of our past actions and the fervent longing to relive them once more. In the kitchen, he brushed against me, his hand grazing the small of my back, lingering for a moment that stretched into eternity. In the dim light of the laundry room, he drew me into the shadows, pinning me against the wall. Our lips met in a kiss that ignited with intensity, quick and fervent, before we pulled away, gasping for air. As darkness enveloped the house and silence reigned once more, we gravitated towards one another, drawn together like moths irresistibly attracted to a flickering flame. It remained unspoken, untouched by any semblance of planning, simply unfolded. One evening, he discovered me perched by the pool, my legs immersed in the water, the sultry Charleston air enveloping us. Silently, he settled next to me, his hand gliding over mine, our fingers intertwining effortlessly. I nestled against him, my head finding a comfortable perch on his shoulder, and in that instant, the universe seemed to fade into the distance. Later, beneath the shimmering canopy of stars, he removed my clothing with a deliberate slowness, a reverence in his touch, as if each garment was a barrier to be dismantled, not merely from my body but from the depths of my soul. The crisp night breeze caressed my exposed skin, yet it was Nathan's touch that ignited a deeper flame within me. We surrendered to passion by the pool's edge, cloaked in the shadows of night and the weight of longing. His hands roamed over me with an insatiable desire, his lips whispering unspoken vows against my skin. Each sigh, each gasp, each whispered plea intertwined our souls, blurring the lines between my existence and his. We found ourselves ensnared by the intoxicating sensation of one another, the exhilaration, the peril, the bittersweet ache of fleeting encounters. Every meeting left me increasingly breathless, yearning for him in a manner that filled me with both desire and dread. For beneath the surface, I understood, affection conceived in shadows could never endure in the brightness. Yet we pressed on undeterred. We pursued the night relentlessly, time and again, until the notion of halting slipped from our grasp. The days blurred into nights, and the nights blurred into stolen moments that left me breathless. Nathan and I lived in a fragile bubble, pretending the world outside didn't exist, pretending we were free to want what we wanted. But reality always finds a way to break through. And it did on a Thursday afternoon that started like any other. I was in the kitchen, humming softly to myself as I packed the kids' lunches for the next day. The house smelled like fresh coffee and summer rain. Nathan brushed past me on his way to the study, his fingers grazing mine. A touch so fleeting no one would have noticed, but my whole body caught fire from it. I watched him disappear around the corner, a smile tugging at my lips, when the sound of the front door opening snapped me back to earth. Footsteps, familiar, wrong. I turned, heart lurching into my throat. Emily stood in the doorway, a suitcase in one hand, her face flushed from the humidity outside. "Hey!" she called out, beaming. "Surprise." The last meetings got cancelled, so I thought I'd come home early. The world tilted under my feet. My fingers tightened around the lunchbox I was holding. Nathan reappeared in the hall behind me, his face draining of color when he saw her. Emily rushed forward, dropping her suitcase to pull the kids into her arms, peppering them with kisses. She didn't notice the way Nathan and I stood frozen, a breath apart, panic bleeding from every pore. I forced a smile, my voice a shaky thread. "Welcome home, Emily." She turned to me, genuine and warm. "Claire, thank you so much for everything while I was gone. You're a lifesaver." I nodded, swallowing the guilt rising in my throat. But even as she laughed and hugged Nathan, I could feel the fissures forming beneath us. The slow, inevitable cracking of something we had foolishly believed could stay hidden. That evening was unbearable. Nathan avoided looking at me. I avoided looking at him. We played our parts: family dinner, polite smiles, bedtime stories. But under the surface, the tension buzzed like a live wire. And when Emily reached for Nathan's hand across the table, when she leaned in to kiss his cheek, I thought I might shatter into 1,000 jagged pieces. Later that night, as the house fell silent once more, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding against my ribs. A soft knock came at my door, a sound so faint I thought I imagined it. I slipped out of bed, my feet barely making a sound on the worn floorboards. When I opened the door, Nathan stood there, his eyes dark with guilt, longing, and something even more dangerous: desperation. Without a word, I stepped aside, and just like that, we chose to fall again, deeper this time into the darkness we had created. Guilt is a slow, relentless thing, creeps into your chest, tightening, twisting, until breathing itself feels like a betrayal. The days that followed Emily's return were a tightrope walk. Nathan and I pretended. We smiled, we nodded, we acted like nothing had changed. But everything had. The weight of what we had done hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Every look we shared was sharper now, tinged with regret, panic, and a desperate, clinging need. We lived on borrowed time, and we both knew it. The end came faster than I expected. One careless mistake, one moment too long. It was a Saturday morning. Nathan had left his phone on the kitchen counter. I was washing dishes, my hands submerged in soap and water, when Emily came down the stairs, smiling, relaxed. She reached for his phone without thinking. It buzzed, one new message. And just like that, the fragile world we built shattered. I saw it happen. I saw the way her face froze, the way her eyes widened as she read the words meant only for me. Last night was everything. I can still taste you. I need more. The plate slipped from my fingers, crashing into the sink, a loud, horrible sound that seemed to echo in the silence. Emily turned slowly, the phone shaking in her hand. Her voice, when it came, was raw and jagged. "What the hell is this?" Nathan appeared in the doorway, his face draining of color. "Emily, wait, don't lie to me," she screamed, throwing the phone at him. The kids, drawn by the commotion, stood wide-eyed at the edge of the kitchen. My stomach twisted. I wanted to disappear. "Get out," Emily said, turning to me. Her voice broke on the words, but her fury burned hot and blinding. "Get out of my house." I opened my mouth to speak, to apologize, to explain. But there was nothing I could say that would make it right. Nathan moved toward me instinctively, but Emily stepped between us like a wall, unmovable. Tears blurred my vision as I stumbled upstairs, throwing my things into a bag. My hands shook so badly I could barely zip it closed. I caught one last glimpse of Nathan at the bottom of the stairs, his hands balled into fists, his eyes hollow with helplessness. He didn't try to stop me. He couldn't. And so I walked out the door, the heavy oak slamming shut behind me like the end of a chapter one would never be able to rewrite. Months turned into years. Charleston's seasons shifted. Summers heavy and lush, winters soft and gray. Life moved on, or at least it pretended to. I found a small apartment above a bookstore on King Street. I built a new life, quiet, simple, safe. But there were nights when I woke with the taste of Nathan's name on my lips, when the ache of what we had lost weighed so heavily I could barely breathe. I told myself it would fade, that it was just a wound that needed time. But some wounds don't close. Some loves don't either. One rainy afternoon, years later, I ducked into a coffee shop to escape a sudden storm. The bell above the door jingled softly as I shook the rain from my coat. And there he was. Nathan sat alone at a corner table, a book in one hand, a coffee cooling beside him. His hair was a little grayer, his shoulders a little heavier, but it was him. My heart stuttered painfully against my ribs. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The world around us blurred and softened, leaving only the space between our eyes, our memories. He smiled, small, wistful, almost broken. And in that smile, I saw everything we had been and everything we could never be. I smiled back, not with bitterness, not with regret, but with a tenderness so deep it nearly undid me. Neither of us stood up. neither of us spoke. Some goodbyes are spoken with words. Others are spoken with a glance, a breath, a heartbeat. And just like that, he turned back to his book, and I turned back to the rain. Some loves are not meant to last forever, but that doesn't make them any less real. If anything, it makes them unforgettable. If Claire and Nathan's story touched something deep inside you, let us know in the comments below. Have you ever crossed paths with a love you couldn't hold on to, but never forgot? Make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next story that will stir your heart. Thank you for being part of our family. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and remember, some stories live forever in the spaces between the words.